Hey guys, welcome to episode 9 of the Daily Diesel Show. I hope it's a great Monday for you. I had a good time this weekend. I'm actually pretty sore. As you may guess, I spend most of my time sitting around on the phones and computer. But this weekend, especially coming out of winter, like winter up here, it's terrible. So we end up spending all of our time inside pretty much. We're not really into like skiing or snow machining or anything like that. There's not a lot to do when it's just cold and snowy and miserable. So when springtime comes around, you realize, hey, maybe I was a little out of shape. Spent basically this entire weekend getting our gardens ready, expanded that, getting a second one ready for planting next year, tilling in compost and manure and everything. I guess this is kind of got it set up last year. This mixed a bunch of stuff in this year. Built some raised beds, electric fence around it so the moose don't eat our garden this year. Fun stuff like that. Fixed our dog fence. That was another thing. We've got a dog border that runs around a couple acres of our property, and what a pain. All I can say is, if any of you are considering building a border, like a dog border fence, and like using like shocking collars, spend the extra money and get like the really good like professional cables. Don't get the cheap stuff, because good Lord, is a nightmare using the cheap stuff. It will break and you won't know it, and then good luck trying to track it down. And it's horrible. So just spend the money the first time and get the good stuff. Anyway, on to diesel stuff. As you know, and I've said it many times, this whole show is truly unplanned. Like the most planned that any episode ever is when I'm doing like a Q&A, so answering questions, and the effort that goes into that, or like the time that I put into preparing for that, is that I sit down and I screenshot a couple of questions so that I can read them later. And that's basically it. I mean, a lot of work goes into like producing and blah blah blah, whatever. It takes time, but like the actual like planning of things. And I will say I'm kind of at a point now where everything that I know that I can just say, like sit down and talk about without specifically talking to someone, I've said like many times. And so it's very difficult to know what to discuss. Like, I appreciate it. You guys ask all the time, say like, we'll talk about this topic or talk about that topic. Let's talk about exhaust systems. Let's talk about gear ratios or tire size or, injectors again. But it's like, man, all of that's been covered. At least most of it is as broad as it can be on a show. And so like I'm sort of in a position now where I don't really know like what is next. And, certainly I would love to get more into like the engineering side of things. I genuinely would, to get like at least get a lot more technical about specific components. And the only reason that I wouldn't do that is that it takes a lot more time. Like it's pretty easy to just sit down and have a discussion. That's pretty easy to do. What's hard to do is have a very technical discussion that's going to be accurate and also useful. And then you have to think, well, who is it going to be useful to? I guess I'm sort of surprised, as many of these shows as I've done, that more people, like engineers or whatever, haven't like tried to call out something that I've said. I really don't believe that like hardly anything that I've said has ever been incorrect. Certainly it's possible, but I really don't think so. I refrain usually from saying things that aren't correct. But I don't I don't explain necessarily what I'm saying a lot of times, because there's sort of like, sometimes I try to go like a little too far into like assuming like the understanding of whoever may be listening, and sometimes I sometimes I like don't assume you don't know anything about what I'm talking about, and that's fine. I know for me, like the shows that I listen to, or the podcasts that I listen to, I end up finding myself driven more towards shows that sort of aren't that technical. Like, even if it's something I'm interested in, I'm not looking to learn a lot technically from listening to something. Like, if that's what I'm interested in, then I should probably be studying that topic instead. And so, and that's kind of where like the crisis is here is, well, are we going to continue just being like top level stuff, or are we going to dig deeper? If we're going to dig deeper, that requires a whole lot more commitment and time that I don't really have. It's a lot of work. So I don't really know what the future of this is. When I started this, so I was honest. So here's the thing. The reason I started doing like the daily show, it was many reasons, but like one of the main reasons was that I do believe that there's a lot of good information that doesn't need to be substantiated, and could be useful to a large group of people that I hope, if we get it out there frequently enough, we'll be able to reach more people because of algorithms. And that way, no matter what happens to me, whether I'm here or not, like the information can still be there and hopefully help some people, like prevent some people from making poor decisions and help them make better decisions. Like, simply when it comes to purchasing parts for their 7.3 Power Stroke, which is such a small group of people. Like, I'm actually surprised that there's as many people as are that are interested in these things, because these are like very old trucks. And so, I'll be clear too. Like over the weekend, I had probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 people that had reached out via email that specifically wanted to ask questions or challenge. I don't even know if challenge is the right word. Like some of the statements that I had made. And I totally appreciate that. And I think that that's healthy. And that's sort of where it's like, well, where's the divide here? What are we trying to accomplish and do? So I'm going to try to keep it up. Because I do think that it's important. And like I said, like consistency on like media platforms, like the main place we're going right now is YouTube. The actual podcast itself, it like very slowly is growing, and it has been for a few years. Like, because it's a niche market. Like who are we talking to? Like more and more I'm seeing comments and getting emails from people saying, well, I want you to talk about newer stuff or talk about different trucks or whatever. And like, I'm not good at just like fluff talking. So, and I'm not like, from a like very good understanding side of things, I'm not that experienced with newer trucks. I was a few years ago, but I'm so busy and my mind's so full of things that I forget things that I haven't thought about in a while. So I don't have a whole lot to say. Outside of like what I can think of like right now is that I would love to get to a position where we could do a daily show in the interest of better understanding technically, like mechanically, like engineering wise, the components that go into these trucks, maybe starting from the beginning of why they were designed the way they were, then into what are improvements that can be made to fit specific needs. Because that's really what we're talking about here, is because like the trucks were designed fantastic from the factory. Specifically talking about Fords, right? That's mainly what we talk about, and also more specifically, mainly 7.3s. They were designed to have a life cycle, heavy duty cycle, at their power level that was reasonable for the time and to meet, regulations. And like every component in that truck was put in place for a reason. Like it wasn't an accident. So if we're going to deviate from that, we have to understand why was that component, or why were these components put in place? Why does it make the power, where it makes the power, and when, why were gear ratios or tire sizes or whatever, why was that stuff put in place from the beginning? Then we can say, all right, well, here's a use case for the truck that's different than what was like broadly acceptable from the factory for the most amount of people. And what can we do to improve on that to the point where it will satisfy the need of the truck? And is this truck capable of it? So I think that would be a better way to go. And certainly I think what I wanted from the very beginning from this show, but understand something too. Like I said this several times in emails that I sent today of like, I'm perfectly happy to have a discussion covering the reasons why I'm saying what I'm saying. And like several engineers had written me this weekend with questions about things that I've said. And it's, yeah, we've said that. It's not, let me put it this way. I would love if you are an engineer, or you were an engineer on these trucks, or you are an engineer now and you develop components for modern trucks. I would love to, if you're interested, get you guys on the show to have a discussion about whatever the expertise is that you have. Because I am not an engineer. Okay, I never went to school for that. I was homeschooled, and everything that I've learned has just been by experience. I'm not formally trained in anything. And so if we can get like people that are qualified to talk about this stuff, I would love it. I would absolutely love to have those conversations. And hopefully, as part of this, and another reason I'm doing this daily is because I want to get better at speaking and creating something that's useful. And I can only do that by trying and doing it. Hopefully, in that process, we can figure out a really good system to make it somewhat simple to take complex subjects and make them like graspable by people who aren't going to spend their whole life going to college to understand something. So I think that's maybe the path forward. And I would highly encourage any engineers, electrical or mechanical engineers who work in this industry, if you're interested, to talk to us. I know, and I'm looking from the outside in, I know that like the best way to be to have engineers mad at you as an engineer is to talk about engineering publicly, because that's a very difficult thing to do. Which is why we don't get into that. One, I'm not qualified, and it's very things are very complex, and I'm not sure how to take complex things, especially that I don't fully understand, and turn them into something that's very simple. And I don't know that most engineers would be able to also, even though you have ideas and opinions and you have a basis for what you believe. It's not simple to just sit down and talk about it. It has to be like a very clear understanding of what the expectation of that conversation is. So I get that, but I'm willing to help figure it out if you guys are. So I guess going forward, that's what I'm asking for is any engineers that are in this field that are willing to, if you have the knowledge and you're willing to share it, and you have a specific subject that you're feel compelled to speak on, then reach out. It's just media@1023diesel.com, or my email is just dusty, DUSTY, @1023diesel.com. And I think that probably that would be the way forward. At least for now, that's as far as I can tell, that's probably the way forward. So, I'm sorry, we're not talking about anything specific in this show, but I hopefully, maybe this is the important one. Maybe this is the important one that I hope you guys will be able to share and reach the right people so that we can start making progress on making good, useful information available to people. Because truly, I understand too. Vaughn, I work with him obviously every day. Like, he works for me. And he is an engineer. Like, talking to him generally goes over my head. Like, I've learned a lot from the guy, and continues to. And one of the things that I've learned from working with an engineer every day is that, especially like an aspiring one who's very motivated, is that it's not like it's almost not worth trying to take the time to explain things when it's like I get hired to do a job and I do the job and I make it well. And if you decide to use the product that I made for something that it wasn't intended for, and it doesn't work the way you intended for it to work, like the user, not the engineer, then that's your own problem, because that's not what I made it for. And so from that standpoint, and I think that tends to be like a lot of engineers' standpoint, taking something that was designed from the factory to do something specific and then modifying it, you're basically just ruining everything that they created. And I get that, but that is not how automotive performance works. And so I want to bridge that gap of people that want performance and they have an intended use case or a specific use case and they want to modify a truck. I want to figure out, how do we do that properly and how do we explain it properly? Because me just telling you from my experience, and like a lot of experience, but not, like I said, I'm not a trained engineer at anything, isn't the most useful that it could be. So yeah, I think that probably is the way forward. And hopefully we'll be able to get enough people on here that are well educated, and we can facilitate spreading of good information. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good Monday. I look forward to the future. I don't know what it looks like, but have a good Monday. Thanks for listening. There's a couple thousand of you guys that listen to this. I genuinely appreciate it. I have no idea why you find it useful, but I'm glad you do, and we will try to keep it up and make it the best that we can for all of you. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.